video, we're just going to look at a couple of questions on functions that have come up in exam questions before, and we've kind of skipped them before and we said we'd come back to them. So we're going to take this opportunity to just look at two examples. Ignore the dog. Two examples, and then I'll give you one or two to try. But they're questions we've seen before, but we couldn't quite finish because we hadn't really looked at the topic in enough detail yet. So the first example is the 2013 paper 1, question 15a, and we can only do 15a at this stage, but it's on page 166 of your past paper question booklet. So I'm just going to do one example of it, but the question basically says solve f of x equals 2x squared plus x minus 6 if f of x equals 0. Now it's kind of written in a different way, but that's the general twist of it, and it just said solve this. So what confuses people about this is just simply the way it's written. They've told us what the rule is, what the function is, and they told us that that function is equal 0. So what we can say is, well, 2x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0. And then the question just becomes a typical algebra question or quadratic equation question. So we just have to solve this. So you can solve it in one of two ways. You can use the minus b formula, where a would be equal to 2, b would be equal to 1, c would be equal to minus 6. Takes a little bit longer, but you can do that. I'm just going to do it the factorizing way that I do it, and you could use the guide number if you prefer. We have factors of 2x squared are 2x and x. Factors of minus 6 will be could be minus 3 times 2, 2 times minus 3, 6 times minus 1, or minus 6 times 1. And we have to pick one set of these to go here and here that add together to give us the coefficient of the x number, which is just plus 1. But remember, whatever number goes here gets multiplied by 2. Whatever number goes here gets multiplied by 1. So the answer for this one is, well, we want a positive, so it's going to be 2 times plus 2 minus 3. And we can just check that. We have 2x times plus 2 gives us 4x. And then we have minus 3 times 1x gives us minus 3x. And when you add both of them together, you get plus 1x, which is our coefficient here. So that's correct. So remember, the question isn't finished until we get an answer for x, because we've been asked to solve it, and if they say solve, they want an answer for x. So we have 2x minus 3 equals 0, which is our first factor, or x plus 2 equals 0, which is our second factor. So add 3 to both sides. 2x equals 3, x equals 3 over 2, or take away 2 from both sides, x equals minus 2. So there are your two answers. So really that question isn't anything new, it's just the way it's written. Now there's two more parts to that question, part B and C, and I'm going to ask you to do them as part of your homework. All your work is homework at the moment, but as part of your work. The next question I'm going to look at, and this is an example again, but you might want to take a note of this. This is just a slightly different example, but I'm then going to get you to do a similar past paper question. Let's say in a question they told us that g of x equals x squared plus 3x. And they might ask you, they do ask you, find g of x plus 1 in terms of x. Now, first of all, that in terms of x is just a bit of a clue for you that you don't actually need to get an actual answer. It's not like the last question where they asked you to solve. Here we want an answer in terms of x. And again, this confuses people with the way it's written, but if they ask you to find g of 3, I would assume, or I'd hope, that that's fairly easy. Well, we just replace the x with a 3 and we get 3 squared plus 3 times 3 is 18. And there's your answer. Here, it's exactly the same rule, and it's the same with maths. Once you know the rule, you just apply it, even if it looks a little bit more complicated. Except we don't replace the x with 3, we replace the x with x plus 1. So instead of having x squared plus 3x, we'll have x plus 1 squared plus 3 times x would be x plus 1. So anywhere where there's an x here, we replace it with x plus 1. Don't fall into the trap. X plus 1 squared is not equal to x squared plus 1 squared. Seen a lot of that in the mocks, but that's wrong, remember? It's x plus 1 times x plus 1 plus, this will be 3x plus 3. Multiply this out, it will be x times x plus 1 plus 1 times x plus 1 plus 3x plus 3. That's going to be x squared plus 1x plus 1x plus 1 plus 3x plus 3. Simplify it down by adding the like terms. So we've only one x squared term, but we've plus x plus 3x is plus 5x plus 1 plus 3 is plus 4. So that's your answer. So you found g of x in terms of x, and it's an expression, it's not an actual answer. It's not equal to anything, it's just an expression for what that is. The last example then, going on from this, let's say they said to you for part 2 of this question, find the value of x when g of x equals g of x plus 1. Again, it's the way this is written that confuses people, but what was g of x again? Well, if we go back, g of x was just a function, it's a rule, and the rule was it's x squared plus 3x. So I can replace that g of x with, well, x squared plus 3x. G of x plus 1 is just another rule now, another kind of function or expression, and we know that g of x plus 1 was equal to x squared plus 5x plus 4. Now notice in this question we have an equal to sign, and because we have an equal to sign, we can bring everything to the left and we'll be left with 0 on the right, and then we'll be able to hopefully find a value for x. So I'm actually going to bring everything over to the right. I'm going to take away x squared from this side, which means I have to take away x squared from this side. That means they cancel here and they'll cancel here. I'm going to take 3x away from this side, 3x away from this side. They cancel here. So on the left hand side I have 0 left. On the right hand side I have 5x minus 3x, which is 2x plus 4. Now we have the 0 on the left hand side, but we can just rearrange that to put 2x plus 4 equals 0. And we want to solve for x because they asked us to find the value of x. So we take away 4 from both sides. 2x equals minus 4. Divide both sides by 2. X equals minus 2. And there's your answer. So there are just two kind of common questions that could come up in exams, and you're going to practice a couple of them now. But make sure you understand everything in this and take some notes and pause it and rewind it if you need to.